I skip a lot of Hebrews with working through the whole New Testament in a year. There's some good stuff in First Timothy. Let's see, did we skip over? No, we got 2 Peter coming up. I can't remember where we are in spreading things out. We'll hit 1st and 2nd Peter. We'll only actually look at 2nd Peter in the service, but you'll be reading some of these others coming up. But some of the things that we kind of glossed over in Paul, of course, 1st and 2nd Timothy and Titus, there's a lot of instruction about life. Philemon is a very interesting case study because Philemon is a personal letter from Paul written to a guy named Philemon. And Philemon was a slave owner, which a lot of people in the Roman Empire were. And it's Paul writing, telling Philemon to set his slave Onesimus free. Because Onesimus had escaped for whatever reason and had found his way to Paul. And Paul tells Philemon, hey, you should just let him go. And if he owes you any money, just count it to me. Keep in mind, though, that you owe me your own soul. So however much money you think that's worth, let me know. And so there's some interesting things there where Paul, when he writes his letters to churches, and I think we can apply this in several ways. When he writes his letters to churches, he talks about, he leaves, for example, slavery, and 1 in 3 people in the Roman Empire were slaves. 1 in 3. That means that, one of y'all 3. So pick one. One of you 3 guys, one of you, that type of thing. 1 in 3 people are slaves in the Roman Empire. That's a lot of slaves. And a lot of Roman slaves were treated fairly well. Most teachers were slaves. Congratulations. A large number of physicians were slaves. There is actually a viewpoint that points out that a Roman citizen who was in prison was allowed to keep 1 slave. 2 Timothy, Paul says, only Luke is with me. What does Luke do for a living? He's a physician. More than half the physicians in ancient Rome were slaves. Roman citizens that are in prison are allowed to have 1 slave with them to meet their needs. Paul says to Timothy, only Luke is with me. You can connect the dots and see what there's a suggestion that Luke is at this point. That perhaps even that Luke has given up his freedom. He may have been a free man, and based on his I was here and I was there, he probably was. But by the time you get to the end of 2 Timothy, it's possible that Luke has given up not just his freedom to do whatever, but that he has truly given up his freedom to meet the needs of Paul, to meet the needs of spreading the gospel. But when Paul writes to the churches, he doesn't say, hey, y'all go out there and overthrow slavery, because first of all, that would have caused so much chaos in the Roman Empire that you would have hunted down everybody and thrown them in prison for trying to destroy the economy of the Roman Empire. But what he does do, when he writes one guy, he says, you need to stop this. We as Christian people can very easily find lots of ways and places that we would love to see the world change and be a better place. But I'm going to give you an idea that comes from, and you've heard it before if you're over the age of 6. You've heard this and you understand this concept, but you're going to get it again because I'm going to tell you that it's scriptural too. It's not a chapter and verse scriptural idea. It's a put the whole of the Bible together and look at everything that's going on. If you would like to see the world change, realize this. The first place that it changes is in one-on-one interactions with people, with persuading another individual to do what's right, and then you let it spread. Paul never writes to a single church and says, y'all get together, form you a society, and overthrow slavery. He writes to a single Christian and says, set your slaves free. We can look around and see things that are wrong And there are lots of things that are wrong. And some of them we ought to try to fight however we can fight them. Abortion is wrong. It kills a human being. It is a medical procedure guaranteed to kill half the people that face it. Wrap your head around that one. Okay? If half the people that took a Tylenol died from it, you wouldn't be able to buy it at the Walmart. Would you? No. Okay? I mean, the fact that, anyway. But if we really want to see that change, well, yes, lobby, do whatever we can. You want to see that change, find one person headed down that path and do whatever it takes to show them the love of Christ and persuade them to take a different choice. Divorce is bad. It's unbiblical, except in certain cases. So what do we do about it? Well, we can pass lots of laws and make it a lot harder to get a divorce again. Because it used to be really hard to get a divorce. Now it's really easy. All you got to do is have enough money to get one. We could do that. Better way is to make sure that those of you who know what it takes to be married have a relationship, not that you go in and lecture to 40 youth on Wednesday night, but that you have a relationship with one or two of these who are not married yet, so that you can invest in their life, so that when they're going, I wonder about marrying this person, you can sit them down and say, sweetie, I want you to think about this. Your boyfriend's treating you like my first husband treated me. He was rude, he was insensitive, he was a jerk. And 6 months into being married, he started hitting me. You need to dump him. Don't even think about marrying him. Show him the door. For the record, ladies, if he's rude now, he'll be worse later. Show him the door. Boys are rude. Men are not. Got it? Otherwise, there's a door. Show him the door, though. Let him walk out of your life. Guys, if she's whiny and conniving now, she'll be worse when you get married. So don't do it then. Don't go down that path either. Boys are not the only people that turn out bad, okay? But you know what? They all chuckled when I said that, and you know what they're all going to do? By the time they get to Sonic, it's flushed out of their brain. But if you have a relationship where you know their name and they know your name, they will listen to you. They will even come and ask you, what about this? You want to change the world and change that future? Build a relationship with one person and change that future for that one person. Because we can group lecture, but it doesn't make as big of a difference. When we want to see things change, we change them by building relationships with people, pointing them first to Jesus. Paul doesn't write to some non-Christian guy and say, hey, you should free your slave. I bet you Paul encountered lots of escaped slaves. He seemed to have been a magnet for all kinds of strange things. Folks would have come to him from all around, and he would have encountered various ones. And it wouldn't surprise me, and it's not biblical, so it's just a guess, but it wouldn't surprise me if one of the reasons that Onesimus goes to Paul is because Onesimus had seen another escaped slave go to Paul, and Paul said, here's 10 drachma, head for Carthage, and helped him beat feet on because he knew that the slave had escaped from a lost guy who, when he went back, the guy would have had him put to death. I don't think Onesimus expected Paul to write a letter to Philemon and say, here, take this back to your master. You need to go home. But Paul knew that he had invested enough in Philemon's life that he had brought Philemon to Jesus. And because they had the common ground of the gospel to start with, Paul could look at Philemon through a letter and say, change this about your life. We tend to go to people and say, you need to change this about your life. Oh, and by the way, come to church because I'd like for you to meet Jesus. When you turn that back on its head, your neighbor with a drinking problem, they need the gospel. And then the gospel in Jesus will help them break the drinking problem. We tend to go to them and say, stop drinking. Works the other way. We can make a law that makes people stop drinking. Oh, well, we tried that and it failed utterly. Hence Al Capone and the Untouchables. It's prohibition. Look it up. 18th Amendment. 18th Amendment to the United States Constitution, it was a bad time. I wasn't there, but I've read the stories, okay? Not that old yet. We can make the laws, but if we want to change the world, we need to change the hearts. That takes time, and it also takes, well, to be honest, Paul writes Philemon from prison, probably in Rome. We think it's one of his prison letters in Rome, and we say prison letters. It's not as bad of a prison as he's in 2 Timothy. It's when he's in his own rented house under house arrest. Made it easy for him to find. Just looking for the guy who's chained to a Roman soldier. Under house arrest, awaiting trial. We're going to change the world. We may have to be willing to be chained to somebody so that we're stuck in one place where people will find us and know that we're the person with God's truth. And so I would challenge you to think that way. To realize that whatever we're going to do in this world, it starts with investing in people enough that they come to Jesus. And we have the common ground of the gospel to start off with. Let's pray together. We'll go home. Father, thank you for this.